So it's been a while since I've posted anything on the channel, and still not in a place where I really want to be on camera, but I had to talk about the finale of Game of Thrones and the whole series just in general. And I'm going to try to keep this pretty short. I'm going to try to keep it about 30 minutes or so it won't be that long. But so first, I'm just gonna jump into it. Just talking about this season as a whole for a second. I've actually been one of the people that's been more on the positive side of the coin. I've really enjoyed the last season overall. There weren't really that many surprises to me. There was a few maybe things that I was surprised at happening. Before I actually say anything substantial, I just do want to say this is going to be spoiler heavy. If you didn't realize that going into it, just going to say that now for all to hear. I will be talking spoilers, obviously. So I don't want to see anybody saying spoilers because, yeah, fuck off. Okay, now, continuing what I was saying, one of the things that kind of I was surprised at was Arya taking out the Night King during the Battle of Winterfell. That is definitely something that I didn't see coming until she had that conversation with Melisandre, and then I sort of, at that point, I saw, I kind of saw where they were going with it, but that was shocking, and I thought the way that it played out was wonderful. And I can't tell you how many times I've listened to the Night King song, because it's probably my favorite piece of music that has come out of Game of Thrones. That and Light of the Seven, I think, are my top two favorite songs that Ramin Djawadi has done. He's just a fantastic composer. But that was the really the big moment out of this season that really made a surprise. Like I said, I mean, there were some other things, but that was really the main one. Because leading up to this season, and something that I do every time a new season came out was I'd watch the series again from the very beginning. So this was my fourth time going through it. I started watching in season 5, but then I also rewatched it at the same time my dad was going through it, for the first time. So there's a fourth in there in the midst, but yeah, and so and it's really cool seeing the different things that you pick up on the more you watch it from the beginning. And so I really could see, and I'm not just being one of these uppity kind of people talking about Game of Thrones, because I'm sure a lot of people feel like there are people like that out there in the space, but they really have been planting seeds for a lot of the things that happen throughout the show. And you pick up on it more and more the more you watch it, just how deep those roots go is pretty cool. But again, going back to this season though, overall I thought this was a good season, and I'll sort of come back to that in a minute once I talk about the whole series as a whole. But yeah, I've been one of these people that I absolutely have adored this season. I thought it was a great season, and I love the moment in the finale where Dany is landing, and you see Drogon's dragon wings pop out behind her. It was very artistic and very for it 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 I don't know if foreshadow is the right terminology to use, but it definitely gave you the vibe of who, you know, Danny was and is at this point in the story, and that there's really probably no coming back, you know, for her. Tyrion, you know, Peter Dinklage on his A game as usual. I think Tyrion was, I think the best thing about this episode. You know, there were two moments in the finale where it genuinely made me cry, and one of the moments was Tyrion finding Jaime and Cersei in the rubble, and the other moment was when Brienne writes the last line about Jaime and the book. It just brought out the emotions in me. So, you know, I thought this was as good as a finale, a series finale, that anyone could have hoped for. Only one of my predictions really came true. I predicted that Jon would go and live out the rest of his days, basically, with the wildlings. So I was glad to see that happen. But, you know, he's the one character, though, on the show that I don't think people really think about, though. I don't think it was ever possible for Jon to truly have a happy ending, especially since he was the one who killed Dany and took her out, which I'm glad they went there, because I didn't think that Jon was going to do that. I didn't think that he had it in him, and so I'm glad that they wrote it and it played out in the way that it did, because it just, you know, the book series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. It makes sense that you'd have, you know, Jon, aka Aegon Targaryen, you know, someone who's been raised in ice, you know, take out, you know, the fire, you know, and the flame, the Targaryen that's very evil and mad and all this, you know, type of stuff. But again, I didn't think that they would go there. I thought, you know, my prediction was that Arya would take her out, which obviously didn't turn out to be the case. And that definitely would have been a more fan service type ending. But yeah, you know, Jon. I don't think it was possible for Jon to have a more satisfying ending than he had, because if you really know the character of Jon and how noble he is, I mean, you know, it's like, you know, the ending we got. He killed his queen, and he's gonna have to live with that for the rest of his life. You know, whether that was the right thing to do or not. If he didn't kill her, then, or if somebody else didn't kill her, then he'd have to live with whatever, you know, she starts doing, and whether or not that was really the best option, you know, once she started to, you know, dominate the rest of the world. So I don't think either way the coin flipped. It landed on that he really would have been happy, and so I think him getting the ending that he got was the best that we could have asked for. Now, I didn't predict that, you know, he would go back to the Night's Watch and then, you know, abandon his duties, if you will. But I knew he would end up in the real North, as Tormund would say. You know, me and a friend were talking about the episode after it ended, and I think really with this season where I land, I'd rate this season probably about a 7.75. I want to rate it higher, but we'll get into that in a second. But I just can't. Maybe the more I'll watch it, maybe it'll get that extra 25, you know, 0.25 and make it to an 8, a full 8. But I feel really comfortable with saying this season is like at a 7.75 for me. The series as a whole, I think, is a 9. Is a 9 for me. It's not perfect, but it's but I think it's absolutely one of the best shows, if not the best show that has ever been on television. So let's get into that a little bit, and I'll just say this right off the bat and just clear the air, because I just want to say it, and it feeds into why I haven't rated this last season higher. Is the last 2 seasons have been rushed, I've said this a lot. I think I even made a video about this 2 years ago when they announced it. But when the announcement came out that there was only going to be 13 episodes across 2 seasons, I knew it was going to be extremely rushed. And I knew that there was going to be an issue with that. And the final season took the blunt of the hit. The first, I think the first 3 episodes took less of a hit than the last 3 episodes of the season. Even if we had a full 10 episode season, I don't really think much would be different about those episodes. But you could definitely, this season just needed a lot more room to breathe. There was a lot of the story beats that I wish was fleshed out more. I know they were trying to get away from that, because a lot of the complaints from people was that there was a lot of stuff in season 6 and 5 that were really slow and stuff. But something I've always said is those slow character development, dialogue heavy moments is why I love Game of Thrones. Those are the moments that I came to the show for. Not that I didn't enjoy the action. I mean, when you're talking about Battle of the Bastards and the Night's Watch, I always forget, Watchers on the Wall or whatever it was called in season 4. Those episodes are fucking brilliant. I mean, I think Watchers of the Wall rivals Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. So you have these epic, awesome battle stuff, but anybody can do that. It doesn't take a lot of work. I mean, it does take a lot of work. Let's not be taking anything from that. But in perspective, it doesn't take a whole lot in comparison to do big, action-heavy sequences. What is hard to do is to have small character moments, dialogue-heavy moments, and have actors that are good enough to carry those scenes through. I mean, I think all through the series, from season 1 all the way to season 8, I think some of the best stuff in the show has been the moments between Tyrion Lannister and Lord Varys and the conversations that they have together. I mean, I always talk about with my friends, one of my favorite scenes of the entire show is in season 2, I believe it is, when Lord Varys and Tyrion are talking, and Varys tells Tyrion the riddle about the sellsword. I think that is such just a great character moment in the show. And so while I understand that they wanted to get to the ending quicker, because look, the actors want to go do other things, Benioff and Weiss want to go do other things. So I get it. From an artistic point of view, you want to be done with a project so you can look towards the next. But I feel like a great disservice was done to Game of Thrones by shortening up the last 2 seasons to 13 episodes from 20. You could really, really feel that. I mean, one thing that I posed to one of my friends is this. I think you could have some sort of filler episode in season 7 as one of the episodes. But then have the last 2 episodes of season 7, if it were a full 10 episodes, have the last 2 episodes be the first 2 episodes of this season. Have the 9th episode be them arriving at Winterfell with Dany and everybody and everything, and actually have those episodes be no different than they were given to us. Those are the 2 episodes that I think I wouldn't change a damn thing about. And then end that season on the cliffhanger of the hoofprints in the snow. The White Walkers are there. Boom, cut to black. And now you've got to wait a year because the premiere episode of the final season of Game of Thrones is going to be The Long Night. We get the Long Night episode. We get to have it. And then for the rest of season 8, you get 9 episodes of focusing on the throne. You get 9 episodes instead of 3. You can take 2 episodes to cover Lord Varys and him sending the notes about Jon Snow being a Targaryen and let that play out longer than it did and really build up the suspense. You get to focus more on Bronn going after Jaime and Tyrion for Cersei. You get to focus on so many of these things. You get to do more with Bran and setting him up to be king by the series finale. But we didn't get that. And you could tell it. It's so frustrating that they felt the need to rush things because I felt like that would have been the perfect way to do it, because it's like me and my friend sort of said to each other, I wouldn't have changed anything that we got. The final product of the last 2 seasons is not what I have an issue with. It's that it felt so completely rushed. It needed to be drawn out more. It needed to play out so much more than it did, and it's so freaking frustrating. So that's my one complaint about Game of Thrones. That's really it. Is the last 2 seasons should have been 20 episodes instead of 13 or whatever we got. So now I just want to talk about the show as a whole and sort of what it's meant to me and all that kind of stuff. Because we're basically at like the last 10 minutes of what I want, of this. I'm really trying to keep this to 30 minutes. Doesn't really need to be longer than that. So, I remember when Game of Thrones first was coming out. But what I remember most was the reaction that everybody had when Ned Stark was killed at the end of season 1. I was in a much different place in life back then than I am now. And I actually, one instance that I will say is I actually remember walking into church one Wednesday night, and I knew a bunch of the youth leaders watched the show, and I was one of the leaders, but I I obviously didn't watch it. And I heard them all complaining about them killing Ned Stark. And they used it as a negative against the show. Killing off the one moral character on the show. You got a show with a bunch of sex and nudity and blah, 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 and violence and language, and all this stuff. And so hearing that, I just decided that, it's probably something I could skip out on then. I don't really need to watch it. But, around when season 4 was coming out, I was really curious about the show. Super curious. I was watching actually Nerdist on YouTube, and there was a lot of episodes where they brought up Game of Thrones, and they would talk about the Clegane Bowl, as they would call it, and as I adopted the term. And it finally, I remember the episode where they brought up, I don't remember if it was leaked photos or if photos were just, or if photos just came out from on set of season 4. And it was specifically pictures of when Tyrion was on trial. And I was just like, you know what? I've officially decided I want to see this show. But I didn't know how, because I didn't have a job at the time or anything like that, and definitely didn't have the money to pay for HBO, and HBO Now wasn't a thing yet, but it became a thing. Like, as season 5 was airing. So what I did was I signed up for a free trial for HBO Now, and I binged in 2 weeks. I binged all 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, and I think it was up to episode 8. And then I watched the last 2 episodes of season 5 as it aired. And it's actually funny because I thought I was going to miss the finale episode, but my sister had subscribed to HBO Now, and she let me use her account to watch the last episode. So I was thrilled. I wasn't gonna miss it. And I've rewatched the show every season from the beginning. Every time a new season has come out since then, I've rewatched it. I've rewatched it 4 times. I think, like I said at the beginning of the thing, there's a extra one in there that I watched with my dad, because we were watching it at the same time. But Game of Thrones really is my favorite show that has ever been on TV, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on the high of the finale or anything. Game of Thrones is everything that I want in a TV show or a story. I love the characters, the development of them. I think Game of Thrones has a lot of morality in it, and a lot of good life lessons and good things that you can take away from it, which you can't say about a lot of TV shows nowadays. I think there's a lot of lessons about being selfish and being naive and being all these different things that we deal with being humans, and emotions, and all that kind of stuff, I mean, even with Danny, I mean, I think the brilliant thing about Danny's character in the show is for years, we thought we were watching the rise of a liberator, but we were watching the rise of the villain. And the sad thing is she didn't start out that way. She very much started out as someone that wanted to do good. And I even think even up until her last moment, she thought she was doing good. I think the character thought she was doing what was needed. But somewhere along the way, she really lost sight of morality and truly became the mother of dragons, fire and blood, the whole 9 yards, the Queen of Ashes, as you will. So, and it was, I mean, Danny had so many great moments on the show too, and there's a reason why she's in my top 3 favorite characters. My top 5 would be Jon, Tyrion, Danny, Brienne of Tarth, and then 5 odds out probably go for me to Bran, because even though there are other characters because of their personality that I like better, like I absolutely love Bronn. I even love Cersei. I love what Lena Headey did with the character of Cersei. I love Sansa and Tormund. But Bran's story is so unique, is so different. The first 4 seasons of him leaving Winterfell and journeying to find the Three-Eyed Raven and all that, I just find fascinating. So and even when I went through the show for the first time, he was my favorite character. So I think probably Bran takes that 5th character, but I absolutely love Gwendoline Christie as Brienne. Ever since her entrance into the show, I've just loved her. Just absolutely fallen in love with her character. I love the arc that they gave Jaime. There's just so much to love about this show. It really is an achievement in storytelling, and I'm starting to get emotional just talking about it. It's crazy to think that Game of Thrones is over, that we finally arrived to this place and there's no more. I am definitely going to be one of those people that now that the show's over will definitely give the books another try. I want to buy the leather-bound set that's on Amazon. I think it's super cool, and then when the last 2 books are eventually released, have to get them to complete the story. So that's probably what I'll end up doing eventually. But when I do, I can't wait to read it and to see the differences between the books and the show and all that kind of stuff. So I guess closing this whole thing up, because we're at the last minute, it's been a journey, and I know that probably not a lot of you have probably felt as positive as I do about it. I would hope that everyone got out of it what I did, but I know that's just unrealistic. And honestly, whether we had 20 episodes or 20 or 13, I don't think there was going to be a way that Game of Thrones ended where everybody was satisfied. I think no matter how the show ended, we could use whatever excuse we want to. Oh, we needed more episodes. Oh, things are rushed. Blah, 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 blah. But when you're talking about a show as large, with a fan base that it has, it's just impossible to do perfectly. Even though I felt like they did it perfectly, I know that in reality, not everybody feels that way. So, Yeah, comment down below. Feel free to say what you think. I'll be interested to read what you think, and who knows, maybe I'll respond or reply. We can start a dialogue about this wonderful, wonderful piece of art. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and who knows, maybe you'll see something else popping up on the channel soon. Peace out.